A part of your story really interested me, is something we kind of went through. And if you want to give kind of a little rundown, I know you guys were raided by a SWAT team over essentially an urban garden. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All of that's been said, but something that was really interesting you were talking about. About 2 years ago, we live on a 6-acre property. It's on the Stillwater River, just outside of Dayton. It's really, really beautiful. And we had 18 free-range chickens out here, and they were fabulous. All the neighbors loved them. One day, a few of them got on a deck from a new kind of suburban development that's come here within the last 10 years. Immediately, the person called the police. We had the police come out and say, you guys can't have chickens out here. We got looking into the code because we live in a place called Clayton. It's been turned into a city from a township. And what they did when they turned the place into a city, even though there is no city per se, there's no downtown or anything, it's really just land outside of the city of Dayton, they made it illegal for you to create a structure for any kind of chickens. And so we had to get rid of the chickens because we didn't want to go into a legal fight with them, coming down and trying to pick the property apart for any other code violations they could find in any obscure code. But the whole experience to us was like, they use these codes to dictate what type of lifestyle and the ability for us to basically produce, our own food, or at least a good portion of it. And so they're kind of forcing us into an economic system that we don't want to be a part of.
And they're doing that very purposely, very deliberately.
Yeah, and you can talk, the things that require people to have lawns where they could grow fresh greens. You seem to have a lot of knowledge about, zoning as a lifestyle, I guess force. I don't know, what would you call it? I mean, forcing people to live a certain way?
Well, if you were to compare this country right now to, this country 115 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't call this country America. It wouldn't resemble anything that this country was founded upon, that was built upon, and that it was thriving upon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all very deliberate. And I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about the many levels of, manipulation and conditioning and, rules and, legislation and, banking that are not only subtly but very profoundly affecting our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
But really ultimately where I see the power is in keeping it simple. And there is law that exists in this country that is very simple. And the fact is that statutes and codes, they're actually there. They're there to govern fictional entities. They're there to govern entities in their official capacities. And it would take me a long time to really communicate how they've tricked the common man and woman to operating in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
The real truth is that we have God-given rights. We have birthrights. They're not given to us by a constitution. They're not given to us by a government. They're not given to us by government officials. They're birthrights. We're born with them. And there is law in this land to serve, protect, and uphold those birthrights. And those birthrights allow us on our own piece of land to do whatever we want, as long as we're not hurting somebody.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're not hindering their lifestyle, as long as we're not interfering with their way of life, then we are doing no crime. So that's very simple stuff. And, we're in city limits of Arlington. And, a anyways, because we used the law. We proved on record that they don't have the authority or the jurisdiction to enforce the codes or the statutes upon us, because those codes and those statutes are in disregard and or are actually in direct conflict with our birthrights. And so they become void ab initio.
Okay.
So we've used this law very successfully for, quite a good period of time now to do whatever we want on our land, despite their codes and their statutes. And, they sort of contrived this whole, drug trafficking scam as a way to justify them forcing their way onto our land, and, trying to destroy us.
Yeah, what I found really interesting about the story wasn't as much the raid, because unfortunately that's going on so often, we hear so much, was the backstory of how this started via the conflict in codes. Now, what exactly were they citing you with, and what were the supposed violations?
Well, they've cited a lot of violations. Improperly stacked wood, long grasses, indoor furniture that's outdoors,
mm-hmm.
Generally unclean premises, mechanical parts, in uncovered areas. They've cited a lot of stuff over the time, but our whole point the whole time has been is that, this isn't about whether we're violating the codes or not. What this is about is, do the codes actually have any jurisdiction here? And do you actually have any authority to enforce them? That's been the whole issue. We're not here to argue whether we're in violation or not. We're here to challenge the jurisdiction. And that's where the real power is, because they have to establish on record jurisdiction before they have any authority. And if they don't establish that jurisdiction, then they don't have any authority. Because all government officials, they have limited delegated authority. And that authority only comes into play when, something happens that, gives them that authority. So, for example, if you're, driving your car like a really good slave, in between the lines, you've got your registration, there's nothing wrong with your car, you put your blinkers on, your headlights work, you're not going to get pulled over. But if you're driving and you swerve the line, that police officer, all of a sudden, their limited delegated authority pops in.
Mm-hmm.
That was out of the line. Now I have power to pull you over and investigate what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they think that, the certain codes and statutes is that red light. Is that swerving between the lines, which gives them that limited delegated authority, but we don't. We disagree. And so what we've done is we've challenged the jurisdiction. We're not going to argue. We're not going to fight whether there is violation or not. That's completely besides the point. To us, what the point is do you actually even have any authority whatsoever to enforce, and or do these statutes and codes actually have any authority over us whatsoever to be enforced?
Well, so, that brings up a question to me then. How would you propose someone enforcing, say if you got a guy who's like just pouring nuclear waste into a hole in the ground in his backyard? Obviously, that's not going to be good for his neighbors or the town or wherever.
Right.
Who's going to get the jurisdiction to? I mean, I want people to enforce.
You can very easily prove that on record in a court of law as harming your life,
mm-hmm.
as being harmful to your path of happiness, your spiritual path, your path of well-being, for
mm-hmm.
you being secure in your land, because you can pull up scientific studies that show, that nuclear waste has, an X amount of radius of effect over an X amount of time, and you can prove that it's going to be something that's going to affect you. And if you can prove that in a court of law, then what you're doing is you as a free man are bringing claims of damages against another man. And so that's totally legit. That's totally legit. We're not saying we can do whatever we want. We're saying we can do whatever we want as long It can't be like, oh, well, we have the rights, but you don't have the rights. We're all born equal, right? These truths are held as self-evident. We're all born equal, and we all have these rights at birth given to us by God, by our Creator. And we have the power of the Creator. So, if we as free men and women, with our right to free will, if we make choices that harm somebody, well, number one, it is possible that, someone makes a mistake, meaning they weren't doing it maliciously, it was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, in an honorable society, whatever neighbor felt like they were being harmed, ideally they would come to their neighbor, right? They would go to their brother,
mm-hmm.
right? And this is the way it would work in an honorable society. You would go to that person, you would say, look, I have a problem with this. This is how it's affecting me. This is why it's negatively affecting me. This is why I have a problem with it. And ideally, if it was a mistake, that person would be like, oh, I didn't realize that was even happening. I didn't even realize that was going on, or I didn't realize that was affecting you in that way. Of course, I will do something to make sure that no longer happens. And then it's resolved. You don't even need to go to court. You don't even need to go to the police,
mm-hmm.
right? Because two honorable individuals come together and they have a conversation and there's resolution.
Yeah, it would have been nice if someone would have come to us about our chickens and just said, keep them off our porch. But that's kind of like where we've gotten to in a lot of places in America, where we're neighbors with people and we're calling the police on each other over a chicken. Or
right, which, again, and this is what shows you, which is my bigger point here, is that, obviously, the government is overstepping its bounds big time. Obviously, people are terrified of the government, which is tyranny, which is not freedom. The majority consensus of the whole population in the United States thinks, and if you do a poll of this, you'll find this everywhere you go, that the government can do whatever it wants, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's pretty much what everybody thinks to be the standard truth. And that's a big problem. But
It's an enormous problem.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. But there's a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is that we, the people, are the power. See, we, the people, are the power. We always have been. We always have been. That hasn't changed. So what that means is that we, the people, are the problem. We're the problem. We have the power, and therefore we are the problem. Now what that means is that we are also the solution. We're also the solution. But if we can't even go to our neighbor, and say, I don't like it when your chickens hop over my fence and eat my cat food, right? If your neighbor can't come to you and say that, there's no possible way that they can ever go to the government and say, hey, I don't like it when you raid my land with a SWAT team.
Sure.
Right? So what I'm saying is that the reason why the government is the way it is because the people have brought it to this point. We, the people, are the power. We, the people, are the power. We, the people, created the government for the people, by the people, for the people. Right? And we created a system that kept the people protected on purpose. And we put lots of rules, lots of regulations on those government officials. That's why all government officials must sign under oath. They sign, swear, and attest to, under penalty of perjury, that they will serve and protect the people and the Constitution of the United States. Right? We made them do that on purpose because there's no room for error when you give somebody a gun and limit delegated authority. They've got to be 100% accountable. So what that means is that in the olden days, if a government official perjured their oath, they went to jail or they were hung. They died. Treason and perjury are potentially, death penalty crimes. Now, the real truth is that most government officials perjure their oath on a daily basis. They perjure their oath on a daily basis, and it's not even looked at. It's not enforced, and that's a big problem. But whose problem is it? It's the people's problem. The people are doing nothing about it, and the only reason it's got this way is because the people have allowed it to get this way. So what has to happen is that there has to be an awakening of the people. The people have to wake up. And what that means is that people like me need to be heard. Organizations like what we're doing here needs to be seen. People need to wake up and see that it is actually possible to live a responsible and honorable life, and what that looks like. That it's possible to live a healthy and free life, and what that actually looks like. People talk about freedom in the land of the free, but they actually have no comprehension of what it is whatsoever, because they were born into slavery.
So how would you describe freedom as perpetrated by Eden Gardens and what you got going on there?
Well, freedom is that we're all kings and queens of our own domain. We make up all our own rules. As long as we don't hurt somebody, we get to make up whatever rules we want. We get to live any way we choose. We are the kings and queens of our own kingdom. We choose. We decide. We live according to our spiritual path, according to our pursuit of happiness. And that's our free will choice, our birthright. And what that means is that we wake up every day whenever we want to. Every day we wake up whenever we want to. Not because we have to, but because we're rested and because we want to. And we go to sleep every night, not because we have to wake up the next day at some certain time, but because we're tired and we want to fall asleep. It's like, have you ever laid in bed, and you're not really that tired, but you're trying to go to sleep because you have to get up the next day? It's kind of a waste of time, and you actually get kind of stressed because you're like trying to sleep, but you can't, and you're thinking about, oh man, I can't sleep, but I need to sleep, and now I'm, going to be tired tomorrow, and blah, 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 and then you don't even sleep that well during the night because you never were able to get really relaxed and really comfortable and really sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's real simple stuff. Going to bed whenever we're truly tired.
Eating when you're hungry.
Yeah, exactly. Eating when you're hungry, whatever you
Stopping
want.
when you're full.
Exactly. These diets, it's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, I could go on and on about the
as much as you want, of whatever you want, whenever you want. If you're eating real food,
mm-hmm.
if you're eating real food, and basically you have to grow it yourself for it to be real food, then you can eat as much of it as you want whenever you want. You're not going to get fat. You're not going to, get sick. The food is your medicine. It's all full of nutrient-rich. It's all nutrient-rich medicine.
Sure.
So, all the diet stuff, it disappears. You don't have to count your calories. You eat as much as you want. If you, cussing and swearing, then you cuss and you swear because you can. You don't have to filter yourself. If you don't like to cuss and you swear, then you don't have to because you don't want to. It's not because you have to or you should or you're supposed to or because it's right or because it's wrong. It's because that's who you are, and that's who you are.
So basically, the only thing you can't do is impede others' happiness.
Exactly. That's the only thing you can't do. That's the perfect world. So here in the Garden of Eden, we wake up whenever we want to. We go to bed whenever we want to. We don't ever have to get up and get in a car. We don't ever have to go compromise our truth or pretend that we're somebody that we're not, or act appropriately, or wear a uniform, or or comply with any dress code whatsoever. We don't ever have to do any of that. We don't have to, wait for our paycheck to do the things that we want to do. We don't go on vacation. We live the vacation. We live.
Yeah.
We don't need vacations, man. We're living the vacation. We're around the people every day that we most want to be around. This is a really big thing. We don't spend time around people we don't love and that don't love us. We don't spend time around people that disrespect us or, that are taking advantage of us or are only around us because we're doing something for them or because we're paying them or, whatever. The people that are around us want to be around us more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And people that we're around, we want to be around them more than anybody else. And so we get to be with the people that we love and respect and admire and appreciate the most.
Well, how have the people in Arlington reacted to this this raid and the subsequent publicity and how people nationally? Have you gotten a lot of support from people over the internet?
Yeah, so far we haven't had a single email from anyone that says, you guys need to stop complaining, shut up. We haven't had a single email from anyone saying, that's what you deserve. You shouldn't be dirty hippies.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person that's contacted us, and it's been many hundreds of people, has said this is an outrage. This is ridiculous. This is a travesty. This is an atrocity. This is a violation of your rights. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. The truth is self-evident, people see the truth. It's very obvious. Now, is anybody really ready to do anything about it? No. Pretty much no one's actually ready to do anything about it.
What would doing something about that entail to the average person?
Well, there's a lot of things that we could do. Most importantly, ultimately, the thing that we can really do the most is stop feeding the system. Right? So
yeah,
that's the most important thing about what we're doing. For ourselves, obviously we live this really enjoyable life, this really healthy life, this really peaceful life, this really free life.
Mm-hmm.
But, as far as our impact on the world, it's really beneficial because we're not feeding the system, right? We're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars a year, on petroleum to get from our house to our job, and then from our job to our house.
Mm-hmm.
We're not spending, thousands of dollars on petroleum to drive to the grocery store and all the other stores to buy every single thing that we use and consume. We almost never get in the automobile because, we really have almost nowhere to go. We don't buy stuff from the store, and, really there's almost nowhere we want to go and hang out anyways because, for the most part, everyone's just a slave. So why do we want to go hang out with people that are, they've got their blinders on, they're, paying all their taxes, they're, working their job, and, they're just waiting for the weekend or, for a vacation. We're not really interested in being around people like that. We want to be around people that are really living passionately full, healthy, vibrant, expressive lives. Those are the kind of people we want to live around. Those are the kind of people we want to be around. So, those kinds of people come to us. We live in the vortex.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are ready to, to live free and to, to be real and to be authentic and, be sustainable and healthy, those people come and find us.
Yeah. We have a thing here in Dayton. It's called Garden Station, and essentially it was just an abandoned urban lot where a lot of drug use and homeless people would different problems occurred, and they had a sustainable group here in the town, took the property over, and like 1,000 different people have put in volunteer hours, and they've just created this beautiful little mecca of, you can go in and eat food, and they have all kinds of workshops on different sustainability, different ways to sustain yourself without paying money into that system, which is it's really, it's a predatory economic system in so many ways. It forces, like I said, going back to those zoning things, it forces us to do things that we don't necessarily want to do, such as driving everywhere. The society has been designed that if you don't have a car, it can be difficult for a lot of people, especially in certain places. So, what do you guys plan next as far as any kind of legal redress?
Well, I just wanted to expand just a little bit more real quickly on the point I was making, because really it's the most important point that we have to make about this whole ordeal is what can we actually do, or what could people actually do, and that is, stopping feeding the system, stop participating in the system. Like, people could realize, like, hey, this is an atrocity, so guess what? I'm going to turn my front lawn into a garden, and I'm going to live within my rights, and I'm going to, demand that my rights are upheld, and if they're not, I'm going to make sure that they're enforced, because our rights were violated. So, other people can't go to court and file claims against the city for us.
Mm-hmm.
It can't work that way. So we're not asking people to go to court and, sue the city for us. It doesn't work like that. That's our path. But people could start, making a point and saying, I'm going to start growing my own food, or, I'm going to get solar panels so that I stop paying the, utility company, or, I'm going to, make a choice to do something.
Stop feeding the beast.
Right, to stop feeding the beast, to stop feeding the beast, to stop feeding the beast, exactly. In fact, taxes, there is plenty of documentation, plenty of law, and plenty of proof out there which shows you the lawful way to not pay taxes. I'm not talking about a big tax evasion. I'm talking about lawful rights.
Mm-hmm.
And it's totally doable. It's totally possible. The IRS, it's a private corporation. The IRS is a private corporation, and when you fill out your tax forms, those are applications. You're applying to pay taxes. It's totally voluntary. It's totally optional. They've just tricked you into thinking that it's mandatory, and it's not. It's an application. It's an application. It is not mandatory. You do not have to pay the IRS. That's a fact. And I have all the law to prove that. Okay? This is really, really, really powerful stuff. I'm not talking about hypothesis, speculation, hearsay. I'm talking about fact. Okay? Really, really, really powerful stuff. What if people started doing that? What if people started doing that? The whole world would begin to change. So these are the main things that we can do. People could protest. They could, call the city and say this is completely unacceptable and blah, 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 blah. Really, that wouldn't do anything because the city doesn't actually care whether the people are mad or not.
Mm-hmm.
The city only cares whether the people pay their taxes or not. The city only cares whether people are compliant or not.
Because if they don't have taxes, they don't have salaries.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I've talked to people. I've been in so many things online where people was like, it's time for a violent revolution. And having been in the military, that is the craziest thing anybody could even think about because they have prepared for that. That's what they do. They're waiting to just slug you over the head because that's like what a lot of these people have been trained, and they find like that's their ultimate moment of glory, what they're living for. And what you have to do is take their salaries away because no one's going to do that if you can't pay them.
I mean, they're...
You still there? I think we might be cutting out.
I pray that people are smarter and they use their pen. They use pen and paper.
Okay, I just lost you a second ago after I was talking about, forget about any kind of violence because that's just, that isn't happening. But to strip salaries away through living in different lifestyles where, hey, if everyone I know saves, doesn't spend $2,000 at Kroger in produce this year, that's one multinational conglomerate that doesn't have. And that's more money that's not feeding the beast.
Exactly. Those are real solutions, real practical solutions. And those are things that don't even require, engaging the law whatsoever. You just stop buying your food at a grocery store. You just stop, getting your electricity from a utility company. Mm-hmm. And the whole fabric of, the society and the country that we know and exist in right now already begins to change drastically and dramatically. You stop paying the IRS. The IRS is the number one way that they fund the military. Mm-hmm. The military is funded by the IRS. And that military is being used against its own people. That military is, they're militarizing police, as we've seen here in Arlington, Texas. They're militarizing, local city police forces all across the country. They're militarizing.
Oh, I was tutoring at a center for Latino kids last year, and we went down for recess, and there's a SWAT truck full of guys, walking around, probably 40 yards away from where the kids are playing. I had to take them all inside, like I have no idea what's going on. They're going somewhere else, but just the general climate of fear that men with guns and helmets creates. I don't know. It seems that either they don't understand that or they don't care, which is my guess. Yeah, that is the plan.
Yep, that's part of their plan. I mean, fear is one of the most powerful control mechanisms that there is, mm-hmm. and it's one of the most common tactics used, throughout history. That's how most dictatorships have maintain their power is through fear.
Sure.
They do that with military force.
Mm-hmm.
So technically speaking, technically speaking, our land is actually it's occupied by we're actually occupied by foreign military. We're
Mm-hmm.
actually occupied, and so that's a pretty dangerous thing in and of itself. And in many ways, we're actually already in martial law. All of these things that are being passed because of the terrorist stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all like martial powers, that are being enacted. We're on the brink, man. We're on the edge. And the common American doesn't see it because they're just playing their video games, they're watching their TV, and they're sitting in traffic.
And the ones that are, if they're tuned into mainstream media, 90% of the mainstream media is owned by 5 multinational corporations.
Right. The mainstream media is owned by, the mega corporations, and the mega corporations are, the ones that control the government. And, it's all this, it's all this high, you have to give it to them. They are diabolical geniuses. There's no question about that. They orchestrated a massively successful slave system. The best slaves are the ones that think they're free.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's working really well. So I don't know if there's actually hope of really waking up the slaves, waking up the masses, because, they're just watching the news and they're sitting in traffic. I don't really know, if it's possible or not. But what I do know is that it is possible to live free. It is possible to live healthy. It is possible to live independent. It is possible to live sustainable. And all of us that are aware of the problem, that's the only real solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only real solution, is to stop participating. It's like, I know a lot of, activists, a lot of, protests, it's like the Occupy,
Sure.
Occupy groups, like, those are a lot of real brave, passionate, great-hearted men and women. Some of the bravest people that I've ever met. But really, those protests do nothing. They really do nothing. And this is a really, sort of a funny paradox. But ask yourself this question. So, these tens of thousands of people that are occupying a city, what are they eating while they're there?
Yeah. That's an excellent question.
Exactly. That's the only question you have to ask. And as soon as you look at the answer to that question, which is they're eating Taco Bell, they're eating Burger King, they're eating from the grocery store, they're eating at the restaurant, what that says is that they are paying the exact same thing that they're protesting against.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is that they're actually voting with what really matters for what they're protesting against. There's no resolution, there's no solution, there's no change there. The people at the upper top, they're just drinking their champagne, laughing. Wow, these guys.
They keep buying KFC.
They're brave, but man, they got no idea what they're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so the people that are aware that the system isn't working, the people that are aware, it does work for what its intended purpose is, but its intended purpose is slavery and control. So the people that are aware that it isn't what they want it to be, it's not what they want to be a part of, the only real solution is to stop participating. And what that means is that we've got to either grow our own food or we've got to buy it from somebody who is growing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to create our own electricity, or we've got to use it from somebody who's creating it themselves, or not use it at all. We've got to, if we're going to use money, we've got to find a way to get money without, paying taxes, without, working for a mega corporation. It's got to be some independent, sustainable, self-employed, non-tax paying revenue. Mm-hmm. That's the only way. Those are all very, very, very real, applicable, available solutions. But we have to choose. We have to choose those.
Sure. Well, I tell you what, I thank you very much for your time. I'm going to let you get out of here. But if anyone wants to get in contact with Eden Garden or Garden of Eden, or you, how do you suggest they do that?
The two best ways would to be find us on our webpage, which is intothegardenofeden.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the next best way, which is actually the best way for continuous updates and whatnot, is our Facebook page. And you can find us on Facebook. We're Garden of Eden, Kennedale.
Okay.
So if you type in the Garden of Eden Kennedale, we'll come up. And we post all the interviews that we do with different people and and media. And just real quick to mention about the media and interviews. We had all the big media people come here and do a story, but not a single one of them shared any of the real details that we were wanting them to share. They just shared that raid came and killed destroyed some blackberry bushes and okra. They weren't against us. They were on our side, on our side per se. But they didn't share any of the real details, like about what the solutions are that I've been talking to you about.
Sure.
About how we had established, before, way before the raid, many months way before the raid, we'd established on the record, that we were free and that we'd already challenged the jurisdiction and we'd already proved that the statutes and codes were void ab initio, blah, blah. They didn't talk about any of the real meaningful, important stuff. So it's really important that, people like you and other people do real stories and do real coverage and share that with the people, because people need to start getting real information. And if you start getting information like this versus the information that you see on, CBS or NBC, you're going to see that, whoa, that's the same story and yet it's completely different. And people start to wake up, people start to see. So, we post all of our stuff on Facebook. We post all our updates, and this has only just begun. This whole thing has only just begun.
I agree with you.
We are dedicated and passionately inspired to really use this as an opportunity to show people that due process of law is not being followed by the government, and that's very common. And it's only we, the people, that can make sure that it is followed. So, we're gonna see the justices enforced, and we're going to prove to people that if the government thinks it can do whatever it wants, there's going to be consequences to it, and I think that's going to inspire a lot of people.